Hello everybody. Happy Tuesday. Had to think about what day of the week it was then, because it all blurs into one at some times of the some days of the week. They all just kind of merge. I hope everybody's well. I have some lovely training for you today on a subject that seems fairly straightforward, but actually is a problem for a lot of you, and certainly a worry for a lot of you, and that's umming and erring when you talk, when you give a speech, or when you go live. And that worry of how not to and too much when you're speaking, how much is distracting, how much is annoying, and how much you should do. So I'm going to go through with you 5 different ways, things to think about that can really help you stop umming and erring to the point of it driving you mad, or for your audience to feel kind of that it's a bit distracting or a bit annoying. If you're with me and you want to ask questions and you're listening live, just drop me a little note. I'll try and hi Melissa, yes, you need this training, good, okay. It's a common problem. We worry that, just like I'm doing now, I'm using ums and ers, but how much is too much? How much is distracting and annoying? So I'm going to give you 5 ways today, 5 things that you can do to really improve that. It's not something you're going to stop overnight, so I don't want you to think that there's some kind of miracle cure. There's no kind of quick fix way to stop you umming and erring, because it's part of natural speech. But there are ways that you can improve, and there are little techniques that you can start to use that you will start to see a big difference. So as I go through, it's only going to be a few minutes training, but if you want to ask any questions, hi Natasha, nice to have you with us. If you want to ask any questions, just drop them underneath and I'll try and answer them as I go. So let's get started. I always practice a little bit what I'm going to do and say when I'm going live like this. So before I go live, I might go in my living room or something like that and just quickly kind of say out loud the things I think I'm going to talk about. And because I knew the topic was umming and erring, as soon as I started to do that today, I was umming and erring, and actually just coming on live now, a few minutes ago, I started to and err. It's like a mental block. It's one of those things that once we're conscious of it, it's very, very difficult to ignore it and to get over the hurdle. So it was quite interesting today realising that actually I was umming and erring when I was practising what I was going to say to you. It's an issue that we all have, because we and we err and we pause and we kind of use what's called bridging words, which is what they are. We use those in natural speech. So when we and err, what we are actually doing is telling somebody that we are mid-thought. We are mid-sentence or mid-thought. Stay with me, I'm losing my track, and I'm going to come on to the next point. So the and the err kind of keeps somebody engaged with us because we are considering our next thought, if that makes sense. It's like a bridging word. So we use ums and ers as a natural way to keep conversation flowing and to keep our thought processes going. But where it becomes a problem is when we are live like this, or where we're in front of a video camera, or we're on stage and we're doing this, and we're doing this a lot. This is when it becomes distracting. And I know it's what worries some of you. So here's a couple of ways to try to reduce the number of times that you use ums and ers. First thing to do, and it's one of the ones that I know you won't want to do, but you need to record yourself and listen. So you can do what I did today. You can make a little speech in your living room or bedroom or somewhere, record it. So speak for a few minutes and record it, and then watch it back, because you will be surprised at the number of times you probably and pause and like I'm doing now, sort of thinking about the next thought, and you'll kind of use that sound, that sound, and you won't know how often you do it until you actually sit down to watch yourself. So I know lots of people dread this, and nobody wants to be in front of a camera and actually sitting there then watching it back and analysing everything. But you need to know how often you do it, how annoying is it, how repetitive is it, and when do you do it? So most people use those ums and ers mid-thought. So it's when you are trying to keep the flow, it's when you're trying to remember the next thing that you want to say. So you use and as those kind of bridging words. So just watch yourself back, or just listen to yourself back and figure out, when do you most do it? When do you most notice it? Because these are little clues as to why you're using it, and it can help you then stop doing it so often. One of the reasons we use ums and ers when we are presenting, when we're going, I'm just watching my puppy rip her bed to pieces at my feet. I'll deal with that later. When we use ums and ers and we're going live particularly, it's for a very specific reason, and it's a common problem that I see. We are really worried about silence. So if I stop now, if I stop speaking, if I create a silence, that to a lot of people is very uncomfortable. So I might slow my speech down now, and I might stop altogether. And then I might bring another thought in. And what I've done is I've created a pause. Now, natural instinct, particularly when you're nervous, is to fill that pause, fill that gap with words. That's often why we speed up when we're nervous. It's often why we gabble, or we think we're waffling when we're nervous. We don't like silence. And I notice this particularly when I'm live. There's a kind of instinct that says, got to keep going, got to keep filling every second of airspace. Every single second I've got to keep everybody gripped. And so we try to fill the silence, and very often that's when we start to use ums and ers. That's when we use those bridging words, because we don't want to stop the thought and then move on to the next one. So my first tip is not to be frightened of pausing, not to be worried about a moment of silence. Finish one thought and then start the next. And that can stop you with the erring. It can stop those bridging words ever being needed. Now again, it takes a little bit of practice, because it takes courage to be quiet. And when you're on a stage, for example, stopping, finishing a sentence and stopping and going quiet, it can feel like an age. It can feel like you've been standing there for 10 minutes. You haven't. It's probably a second. It's just a beat. But being able to do that helps you get your thoughts together, which is one of the reasons we and er, because we don't know our next thought. And it also stops you using that bridging word. So the first thing is to practice. The second thing is to learn that silence is okay. Pauses are absolutely fine. Pause, stop, consider your next thought and carry on speaking. You're very likely to have lost then the opportunity to and in the middle of it all. Another great way, and again this takes a bit of practice, this is not going to come easily, but it's to find other phrases that bridge between thoughts. So let me give you an example. I might say to you something like, today we are going to look at the 5 ways to stop yourself using and er too much. And let me give you another thought. We're also going to look at X. Now, instead of saying and er, I've said, let me give you another thought. You might say something like, let's look at another story, or let me show you another example. What you're doing is exactly the same as what you would be doing if you're umming and erring. You're changing direction, you're bringing the next thought in, but you're using a different phrase. Now, these take a bit of practice because they've got to feel natural, they've got to feel like they are your normal speech. But they are great ways to substitute that thinking time where you kind of end up saying those dreaded words that drive you and everybody else mad. So look for little phrases that can help steer you from one thought to the next. So that's number 3, find other bridging words. Let's move on, here's another story, whatever it might be, but they are great, they're great substitutes. Number 4 is more obvious, I suppose, but I think that when you are more prepared, you are less likely to stumble. You're less likely to need those words. So, like I just said to you, before I ever come live, I don't write down what I'm going to say. I don't script it, I don't plan it, in the sense of I don't learn a speech. I don't come on here with a sort of set order of how I'm going to say things and what I'm going to say. But I do quickly run through in my own mind, and I actually speak it. as well. So I'll go and find a room in the house and I will go and just practice out loud what I'm going to say. This helps me sequence my thoughts, and it helps me practice how I'm going to sound, because I think one of the other things is sometimes when we're hearing ourselves speak out loud and we hear ourselves say things, that's when we use those filler words, because it takes you aback sometimes the way you sound or what it is you're saying. So just being able to practice just for a few minutes, even just a rough idea of what you're going to say. Puppy's now raiding a bag. Just a rough idea of what you're going to say allows you to be better prepared. And there's really no substitute than preparation, because knowing your subject, knowing what you want to talk about, can really help keep you on track when you're live. So you're less likely to make mistakes, to waffle, and to use those dreaded filler words of and Hi Mona, nice to have you with us. Melissa says, should you have prompt cards or a script in front of you? Okay. I always, you can see my little notebook here, I've jotted down some bullet points. So I don't use a script card, a kind of script cards. I don't have a speech in front of me. If you've looked at any of my other training or any of my blog posts, you'll see I write about this, but I say basically, don't do it. You're not an actor. You're unlikely to remember the words in exactly the order that you've learnt them, and it's much harder to get yourself back on track if you've learned a script. I would suggest bullet points. So today I wrote bullet points down of what I wanted to say. So the 5 things I was going to teach you about overcoming the umming and the erring. So I would suggest bullet points, Melissa, rather than the full speech. I think it's easier, and I think it allows you, if you lose your way, you can glance down at your cue card and pick up on the next point even and move on. But it stops you feeling that you've got to have remembered lines. I personally find that very difficult. So I wouldn't recommend it. I would say bullet points. So I hope that helps. So yes, so clear on your topic and clear on what you want to say. So you'll have seen in some of my other training that I suggest no more than 3 things in a video really. If you're going to teach people things, 3 things that they can take away with them is more than enough. Most people don't remember 3 things. If I challenged you in 10 minutes after this live training to remember what I've taught you, you might just about remember 3 things I said, but most people don't even remember that. So don't feel that you've got to come loaded with information. Even when I worked in TV and I was going live, and I might be going live for a considerable period of time, I knew that most people would remember 3 facts at best. So don't feel that you have to overwhelm your audience with loads of information, and you certainly don't have to memorise it all. So 3 things that you really want to get clear on, and have a little practice of how you're going to say it. However kind of relaxed that practice is, just get used to saying it out loud. And I think that helps massively with reducing that stumbling and that fishing for thoughts that we do, which is when we give ourselves away with the ums and the ers. And the 5th and final point, so I'll quickly run through. So number 1 is practice. Practice and listen. You need to listen to yourself when you speak, and how often do you and Notice when you do it, and notice how often. I know it's excruciating, but it's so worth doing, because you will learn a lot about what happens when you speak, particularly when you're nervous. Number 2 is not being frightened to pause. So constantly stop trying to fill the silence, because that's what we do. So learn to pause, learn to slow down, learn to stop at the end of a sentence. Don't be frightened of silence, because that's what you're trying to fill when you're umming and erring. Number 3 is find other bridging phrases and words. So moving on, or let's move on, or I'd like to take you to a different story now, or something like that really helps steer you from one thought to the next and stops you umming and erring. Number 4 is be clear on your topic. So what are you talking about? Why are you sharing it? Bullet points in front of you so you've got some clarity about it, so that when you're ready to go live or ready to speak, you know what your main subjects are that you want to get across. And number 5, my final point, is to accept that it happens. When we speak, we do and we do you heard me at the start when I was kind of preparing to get going with the training. Natural speech includes those words. Where it becomes a problem is if we're doing it constantly. If I had filled this training, this 15 minutes, 20 minutes with loads of ums and ers, although I have sort of indirectly, but if I'd filled it with loads of that while I was thinking about the next thing, and it would be distracting and it would be probably quite annoying. So we have to accept that it is part of normal speech, but you can learn to bring it better under control by practicing and by trying some of these other techniques. But don't beat yourself up if you watch a live back and realise that you ummed and erred for the first few minutes, or that you actually did it quite a few times. Learn and understand that it's normal, and we do speak that way, and just slowing down, being a little bit more prepared, just being clear about what you want to teach, and not being frightened to let there be silence, let the sentence end, can really impact how often you say it. So I hope that's helped. I see Mona says, my voice is always amplified in my head when I'm speaking in public, but never in daily life. Is this something that others suffer from? Yeah, I think one of the things that's always a bit of a shock for us is when we hear our voices out loud, when we hear ourselves back, because we don't sound like we do in our own heads normally. So if I'm talking to somebody normally, I think my voice sounds a certain way. If I listen to a recording of it back, it's always a shock. And even after 20 years of radio and TV broadcasting, I'm still surprised by the way I sound. I'm not sure it's something you ever really get over. And I think sometimes you do hear my screen keeps freezing up. I think sometimes you do hear your own voice back in a kind of louder way when you're speaking, and that's partly nerves. So deep breathing, I've said this in some of my other videos, 3 long deep breaths can be so crucial before you speak, even before a phone call actually, or something like that. But 3 long slow breaths can help you control that. So I hope that, hello Rachel, nice to see you. So I hope that helps, Mona. I hope that kind of explains sometimes why you hear yourself a little bit louder in your own head, but that's normally it's nerves. And so some deep breathing and calming down can really help you. So those are my 5 tips for making sure that and ers are not a regular part of your lives and of your performances on stage or giving a talk to anybody. And I hope that they really help. I'm going live on Facebook every single day. I've made a commitment now to do live training every day on topics that I know people want help with, particularly now Facebook Live is pretty much rolled out here in the UK. Periscope we've got going on. So I know that people are wanting to know how to use that, how to do videos well, how to go live, how to prepare a speech or a talk. I mean, there's all sorts of things. Confidence is another massive one that keeps coming up. So I'm going to go live every single day with a little bit of quick training, some tips and some hints, and share with you my expertise from all my years at the BBC. If there's anything that you particularly like, let me know. Just comment, pop it in the box, pop a message underneath, drop me a message privately, and I will do my best to always cover that then in the live training that's coming up. But I hope today's been really good. Melissa says it's really helpful, thank you. Just recording course materials. Oh, right. Yes, Melissa, you've got a beautiful voice. I'm sure you'll be amazing at it. I'm sure, and also you know your subject so well, so I'm sure that you'll do a terrific job at that. Yes, if there's anything else you want to know, let me know. I'm here to help, always happy to share what I know. Drop me a line and I'll make sure I do some live training for you. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me today. Have a lovely afternoon, and good luck with getting out there and getting your voices heard. Bye-bye.